The Alberta Party's position on vaccines, just one of a number of campaign issues being raised as we head into a spring election. Opposition leader Jason Kenney has spent the past week outlining how he plans to cut regulations on Alberta businesses by 1/3 if he is elected premier. He also promised to pass a law that would help protect women from domestic violence. Meanwhile, Premier Notley took aim at Trudeau, saying he understands his concern for the SNC-Lavalin jobs, but Alberta's struggle to get its oil to market has a far greater impact on jobs. This is where we're bringing Danielle Smith from Global News Radio 770 CHQR. I feel like you and I are going to be talking a lot about provincial politics over the next month or so.
Indeed. And we're going to try to start having a weekly panel discussion with a voice from the Conservative side and a voice from the Progressive side to see what their take is on the week. I find it strange that Stephen Mandel's premier policy launching into a campaign discussion is on this issue of vaccination. I can tell you it's pretty controversial among our listeners because our listeners tend to be more in the line of trusting parents and allowing parents to make decisions for their kids. He also has a pretty confusing position because when you look at vaccination, we find out that most healthcare workers don't get vaccination for flu, and we don't even really know whether or not most adults have up-to-date vaccinations for all of the things that they might end up infecting kids with. So it's a bit of a confusing policy, and I think it's one that's not been very well thought out. The other issue, of course, for Rachel Notley is why in the world did she appoint an anti-pipeline activist from Pembina Institute to the Alberta Energy Regulator? So we're going to be talking about that one today. And then Jason did some really interesting policies this week on tax cuts. Surprisingly, I think to most people, he's not talking about personal income tax cuts. So he's going to keep the progressive and higher level of personal income tax rate that the NDP brought in, and won't even talk about personal income tax cuts other than a carbon tax elimination until the budget is balanced. So he obviously has a plan to get the budget into balance perhaps faster than the NDP. So we've got all these things to talk about, and then this weird case with Prob Gill and the defamation lawsuit that has now been launched against him. We're going to try to understand a little bit more about what's behind that.
No shortage of things to talk about there. Okay, thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, my pleasure.